Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Welcome everybody to a paradigm shift, serving the latent legal market, ditching the billable hour, et cetera, et cetera. In this session, you're going to learn implications of AI efficiencies on billing time, differentiate between various AI tools, how to correctly use AI, the most profitable way to bill clients, and talk about this paradigm shift. I'm Matthew Kurbis. I've had my own virtual law firm subscription-based practice for over 3 years now, though I've been practicing for over 10. I've been using AI since launch. I'm a daily user. So for me today, my contribution is you're going to hear from a practitioner in the field who's doing this and helping other lawyers do this. I was there day one when Gen AI in its current form launched with ChatGPT because I was playing around with the 3.0. So I happen to be there since the very beginning. I teach lawyers how to ethically use AI in their law practice in addition to using it every day. My target market is the latent legal market, though I will say my institutional clients are probably my happiest clients, people who are paying by the hour. Now they don't have to anymore, right? So like we're talking about a lot of things here. You're talking about AI, like none of this is legal advice. It's just for educational purposes only. Now Joshua is gonna talk about himself here.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Joshua Lenon. I'm the lawyer in residence at Clio. It is a made-up title. I'm an attorney admitted to New York, and since 2012, I've actually been helping Clio translate the needs of lawyers and law firms to technology consultants and technology companies. And in this situation, I get to actually translate back to the legal community. And one of the interesting, unique aspects of my role is that I help generate the legal trends report. How many people are familiar with this report? Oh, great. Yeah. We actually have a print copy available at the Clio booth right here. So I'm only going to touch on a couple key points. So once we get done with that, if you want to go and get your own copy, please stop by the booth. We just give them out for free, or you can download them as well. I do want to point out that the Legal Trends Report is a group effort from a team that works literally all year on building the Legal Trends Report. And I'm always thankful that I'm with such a great team and look forward to working with them. So next slide is the team. Oh, yep.
All right, so
that's my team. Yep.
There we go.
Thanks, team. So there's a lot of people who are familiar with the Legal Trends Report, but for those of you who aren't, I want to highlight just how unique the report is. And what makes the report special is that it actually relies upon contributed data from tens of thousands of law firms. This is not a survey of a couple hundred people. This is us collaborating and looking at the aggregated, anonymized usage statistics of law firms across North America who are using the Clio software. So everybody who's using Clio has the ability to contribute the usage statistics. And I want to really stress that point. I can't see client files, I can't see confidential information, but I can see just certain key settings that make a big difference on what we're able to talk about when it comes to the legal industry. AI is disrupting the legal industry. So one of the things that we're able to see in Clio is just settings that you put in, right? What's your default billable hour? And I can't tell any individual customer what their default billable hour is, but I can't see everybody's in a bell curve. And that lets me figure out what's the average billable hour in North America, which is right around $340 an hour right now. And what we did in this current Legal Trends Report is we took a look at time entries and billing data and tried to figure out how big will the impact of artificial intelligence be on billable work within law firms. And this is the big number we came up with. So we estimate that up to 75% of all hourly billable work will be subject to automation by artificial intelligence.
Now this isn't today, right in this very moment, right?
No, yeah, this is a long-term impact that as these tools continue to improve, as we continue to adopt and apply them, which is definitely being done very unevenly right now, we will just see that the amount of billable work that's handled by AI versus by a person will just flip. And we're going to see 75% of a law firm's billable work shift into this automated format.
In particular, right now, even though it's easier than ever and you can get words drafted faster or revised faster, take all passive voice and change it to active voice in multiple pages. We've been able to do that since GPT 3.5. With agentic AI coming, it's actually going to even eliminate the friction of me even needing to prompt at all. So that's maybe where the 75% number is going to shine, is the agentic AI of it.
Yeah. There's a quote that we underestimate the long-term impact of technology and overestimate the short-term. So everybody's like, AI, it's going to change your life. And you're like, yes, but in like 3 to 5 years. And that's what we're talking about here. But we know that 3 to 5 years is happening because lawyers are gobbling up AI right now. We did a survey of close to 1,200 legal professionals on top of the app data that we did. And one of the questions we asked is, are you using AI within your law firm? And how widely would you say you're using AI? And when we asked this question in 2023, about 1 in 5 lawyers said, yeah, we're kind of using AI. When we asked it in late 2024, it was 80%. So 4 out of 5 lawyers are now saying we're using AI in our law firm. Now, it does vary on how widely they're using it. The majority of people is the big gray circle, 34%, saying, yeah, we've got it. Like we're trying it out, minimal adoption. Then when we carved up those answers and we looked at what we call mid-sized law firms, firms of 20 or plus lawyers, what we discovered is that 92% of those law firms said that they're using AI. And that big blue circle is that they have wide adoption of AI. And so these firms are throwing money at this because they think there's a potential there. So what AI solutions are they looking for? In the mid-sized ones, they're looking for basically kind of legal specific task, legal research tools, e-discovery solutions, predictive legal analytics, basically the vendor hall. If you go and take a look, anybody who's got AI and a banner falls into this type of category. We do see that smaller firms are much more likely to go for generic, like just ChatGPT, than the bigger law firms, which is a bit of a difference than what we see overall. The one thing that I think is interesting about this breakdown is generic wins right now, right? But that's rapidly changing. And I think a good chunk of that is because vendors are starting to really build AI into the tools that you see. Anybody who has a Lexis or Westlaw, you can't not have AI right now, right? And even us at Clio are building that in as well. So when we take a look at what they like versus what's available, legal research easily dominates, followed by generic in these mid-sized law firms. And that's, again, because they have the Westlaw and Lexis contracts that not everybody has. What do they want AI to do? The top one on the far left for you guys is actually marketing, right? Write things that I'm not going to get sued for malpractice on. I just may have to worry about an advertising complaint. Let's use that. But on the very far right for you all is the one that's least trusted, which is vetting and intaking new clients. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but I actually think there's a reason to start here with a lot of AI offerings rather than the big list that came before. So what are the benefits that people are claiming they're seeking with AI? It's saving me time and making me more efficient, right? And when we look at the differences between smaller law firms and mid-sized law firms, the mid-sized law firms, in addition to saving time, are actually concerned about the quality of their work. And I think this makes sense. Does anybody here have timekeeper staff that they oversee? I see some hands, right? And training and reviewing is a good chunk of your time, right? And so if I can up their quality by providing them better tools, that's what these mid-sized law firms are doing.
Yeah, I think first AI, Gen AI in particular, they're basically synonymous now. First, it comes for the non-billable time, and it makes that efficient, and it takes tasks that used to take hours down to minutes. But then it comes for billable time after that, after you start adopting these efficiencies, because of course you want to get rid of non-billable time. So that's part of what we're trying to convince you of today.
Yeah, but I think it's a bit of a sort of Damocles hanging over us. Only 22% of legal professionals we surveyed said that AI is going to increase my firm revenue.
If you're billing by the hour, you got to be worried about that.
That's absolutely right. But even with that concern, 80%, 84% of firms that we surveyed is like, more AI is our future. And weirdly enough, that 68% is of firms that aren't using AI. And they still say AI is in our future. So it's really kind of inevitable. We also survey consumers of legal services, clients, past clients, prospective clients. And what we found is 70% of clients either prefer your firm uses AI or just don't care, right? And so that's the majority of the marketplace. So if you're worried about telling somebody that you're using AI, I think that fear is now dead, right? It's you presenting it in a responsible format and they will just take it. In fact, if we look at the next slide, it's not even like a generational thing. Baby boomers, 59%, we're fine with our law firm using AI, right? And as you go all the way up to Gen Z, or Gen Z as they call it in Canada, it's 81%. So there's no reason to hide that you're using AI tools.
Not only do my clients come to me and love the fact that I use AI and I say I'm AI enhanced on my LinkedIn profile, but then they want to know and they're curious about, oh, how are you, because I'm serving the SMB market, how are you using AI? I want to use AI in my business. And so now I've got my clients using some of the same AI tools I'm using for them, but now they're able to use in their business. So now I'm not only their trusted legal expert that they come to, but I'm their trusted AI expert that they come to. So there's huge opportunity here and huge interest in the market about AI.
Absolutely. But the financial impact is potentially greater than I think we're addressing if we stick by the hourly billable market. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Matt to talk about the latent legal market.
Yeah, and so that goes right into the latent legal market. So what is that? Show of hands if you've heard of the latent legal market before. Okay, so about half the room. So according to Grandview Research, and there's a link here, it should be clickable if you download it in the app, that you could see that they estimate that $400 billion was spent on U.S. legal services in 2024. Apologies to those who are here from outside of the U.S. And we know that, according to the World Justice Project, that the vast majority of legal needs are going unmet by lawyers in the United States. So if you just do a little bit of inverse math here, the potential legal market is $1.3 trillion. And that's really mostly billable hours. But when you ditch the billable hour, when you productize your legal services, when you become more efficient, your ability to serve more of the market grows. And you could actually charge more for clients who just need pricing certainty. And when they get things faster, it's actually more valuable to them. So I actually think it's probably closer to $2 trillion. Not to mention when you choose not just fixed fee services, but some form of hybrid or exclusive subscription-based legal services, you're in the legal problem avoidance business. And every client who's not even in that 77%, so even more of the market where they don't even have legal needs yet, now you're able to provide valuable ongoing legal avoidance problems and issue spotting, that thing we learn in law school early on, that becomes an extremely valuable thing just for a weekly, monthly check-in with your client. Let's talk about what's going on, right? And let's see what's happening here. So that's why I think it's larger, right? Now there's pitfalls, right? Like Joshua's talked about, there's pitfalls in certain things. There's, using AI wrong, result in all these issues, right? Sanctions, censures, loss of trust, all of that. But what about the ethical implications of not using AI, right? Now, what makes AI generative, right? Like it generates something, right? But it is not, and in particular, this is really important because of the data Joshua showed that most lawyers are using these generic tools. They are not a source of truth. Just because a generic tool, their large language model, has been trained on data does not mean that it could perfectly regurgitate that information. So what do? We need retrieval augmented generation in our tools, and that is not going to be inside your generic tools. What is RAG? Right? What the purpose of RAG is it retrieves information from a database. And so while I'm not a Clio user, I understand Clio Duo does some version of this with the data, right?
Yeah.
So you're retrieving information and augmenting the response before it generates an answer. And so this is why it's really important that lawyers are leveraging AI tools that are not just generic, because they should be using some form of retrieval augmented generation. And when these large language models have super large context windows, it's not called retrieval augmented generation, it's called something else, but I forget what it's called. But you're able to just query against the context window that you've recently provided, which is also more reliable than just blatantly using a generic tool based on its training data.
Yeah, so all these lawyers that got in trouble for submitting briefs with hallucinated citations, those tools hallucinated the citation because they didn't have access to case law. They just had access to documents that had case citations formatted in them, right? And they're like, okay, so my document needs formats like this as well. And when you use RAG, what you're saying is, write me a brief, make it look like all these other briefs that you've been trained on, but cite from case law. And here's my bucket of case law I want you to take a look at. And it's the combination of algorithm and data that makes it a legal specific tool. And that's the type of tools that we encourage you to lean into in this presentation.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover here, so I'm not going to go through this whole chart, but this chart will be a nice reference point for you to understand, is the AI reliable in terms of factually accurate, right? Is it an industry-specific large language model? Because I do use this chart outside of the legal profession when I'm teaching small business owners about AI. And so, that would be a legal-specific large language model that's been trained on all federal, state laws, statute, contracts, and at the same time has connection to a database of case law, documents, legal documents, et cetera, or your own firm's data. Right? That's your top left corner of this quadrant. It's studied the material, so it's trained on it. Think about it like a person. And it has access to the open book, so it could go and actually look something up before giving you an answer. Would you trust an associate who's read all of the case law ever to give you accurate citations? Of course not. Well, you shouldn't just rely on these LLMs to do so as well. And so we don't have enough time to go into all that.
Yeah.
So the GPT wrapper idea, it's gotten a little bit of unfavorable opinions, but I actually really like the idea of a GPT wrapper. Because what does it do? It takes these large language models and it actually makes them more user-friendly. And even if you don't have an industry-specific large language model that's powering it, and realistically all these tools are multi-model anyway. They're using maybe their own proprietary model, they're using OpenAI, they're using Claude, they're using all these things, right? It makes them purpose-built and useful in a particular way. Right? So a great example that I like to reference of this is GCAI, General Counsel AI. So I don't actually use the tool. I've demoed it. I was there in the early beta. But what they've done with their wrapper is they make it so it asks you clarifying questions before performing the analysis or drafting the document. Right? And that's the way they've designed their wrapper. They don't have a proprietary large language model. Right? And so you could do some really incredible, powerful, useful things with being a GPT wrapper. So just because something's a GPT wrapper isn't a bad thing. But when you're looking at reliability, sometimes you want to make sure they're using RAG, and industry-specific just makes it more accurate. So this is what I like to say. Gen AI is like the smartest person on the planet who's your assistant. They've read everything on the internet, and they work for free or for a much lower cost than a human assistant. But they're an entry-level worker. It's their first day on the job, and this is their first job, right? And it's like that every time you interact with them and start a new conversation with them. Right? So think about that when you're interacting with these tools. And if it's legal-specific AI, it's like the same thing, but it's an associate, and it's their first day as an attorney, working as an attorney, right? But they're the smartest attorney ever. So what would you do, right? You'd provide a heck of a lot of context. You'd follow up with them. You'd iterate on the work product. You wouldn't just submit what they give you, even though they're really smart, right? You wouldn't give up if they didn't give it right the first time. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like anybody who's ever watched an episode of Suits, right? Mike, really smart, and an idiot, all at the same time. That's Gen AI.
Yes.
I see some Suit fans. They should all go to jail. All right, sorry.
Right, it's okay.
No.
So, would you trust this individual, incredibly smart person, as a source of truth? Of course not. Now, it just so happens that unless there's a good GPT wrapper, the way these large language models work, the way they've been trained, is they're not socially well adjusted, right? So they don't know how to say no or ask follow-up questions unless it does, right? Unless it's been specifically, there's a wrapper that does that. But what is it not? It's not. And this is important, by the way, in the shifting of paradigms, right? This is really important to understand how these tools work, to use them to be significantly more profitable than billing time, right? So Gen AI is not a calculator. Right? It's a machine, but it's not that kind of a machine. 2 + 2 = 4 is an immutable truth. Once it's programmed, it always gets that right. Language is all made up. We made it all up. It changes with context. If you've seen some of these deepfake videos now, when the word LIVE, for example, or READ is there, they might pronounce it wrong because it's not fully comprehending the context, right? Is it read or read? Is it live or live? Right, like little things like that, it changes based on the context. And the AI is actually still not great at getting things like that right. So the whole point is it's messy, right? It's probabilistic. It's not deterministic. So it's just guessing the next most likely word, which is why on its own, it can never be relied on as a source of truth. So I talked about the importance of having industry-specific tools, right? So we're not only relying on generic tools. Right, so what makes it AI specific? Well, the vendor is going to tell you. But is that enough? No, but it is a good start, right? They might be thinking about the right things, privacy, security, preserving attorney-client privilege, right? The inputs, the uploads, the prompts will not train underlying large language models. I'm sure Clio's making sure all this is protected.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, if you're using Clio's, it's called Clio Duo. It's an add-on to Clio Manage. When you're using chat and doing the prompts, it does not train the algorithm, right? It only looks at your RAG, your account, and provides answers from that, but it doesn't train the algorithm at all.
Right, you know, it's going to be HIPAA or SOC 2 compliant, right? Higher security, and like, what is SOC 2 compliance?
We just got our SOC 1. Sorry,
congratulations.
Had to brag.
Yeah. So yeah, look, Vanta is a company that they help startups achieve compliance, and basically this is the definition. It's just making sure you've achieved a certain level of security, is the short version.
Both in terms of your technology and in your company procedures, right? So you're doing background checks. Are you keeping an eye on who has access to the data? All of those things, right? Having that type of certification means that they have jumped through a lot of hoops on your behalf.
Right, so we've already kind of touched on this, right? So like the general use models, right? They may be training on your underlying data. They don't typically use RAG unless you're manually connecting a database to it, right? The company can access your prompt history and past uploads. Less reliable results in terms of factual accuracy depending on how you're, the context window and all that. But far broader use cases, right? Like shout outs to Perplexity AI. I have not used Google for search in over a year now. I only use it when I'm looking for the website of a company because it's just a little bit more efficient, but in every other way, Perplexity AI is better. Notebook LM Plus, right? And other Gemini tools. Right now, if you're an enterprise user, you have privacy, you have security. I've read all the terms of service, for using these tools as an enterprise user. That's not training on my data, it's all secure.
So who here uses Google Apps for Business? Anybody? Okay. Gemini is the AI for you. It's built in. You're paying for your apps. You get the enterprise privacy that he's talking about. And this notebook is just a phenomenal tool. You just throw documents in as a notebook, and then you ask questions, right? It'll organize its answers based on the documents in it. I've thrown hundreds of pages at it, and it's been working great for me.
Yeah, I compare it. I'm a Paxton user for my legal AI tool, and I've been benchmarking it against Paxton, and it does an incredibly comparable job. Now, is it as good as certain things that Paxton could do? No. But I'm already paying for the tool just by being a Google Workspace user, so I'm always going to leverage it as an additional opinion on analysis, on data extraction, on creation of content around my existing content for marketing purposes. So you're building your own RAG database with this tool. It's incredibly powerful. A client of mine who's all in on Microsoft uses Copilot. He just signed up for a Google Workspace account at $12 a month just to also use Notebook LM Plus, and he's not using any of the other stuff because that's how powerful it is, and it's worth the $12 a month. So whatever tools you're using, you don't stop necessarily using the other AI tools because it's $12 a month to sign up for that, right? And we as lawyers, we need better tools than just the generic tools, even when they are private and secure and powerful. So the different AI categories, right? You've got research, you got legal AI assistants or associates. Some of them are rebranding themselves as now. Maybe they're doing research, performing analysis. They have your database, knowledge-based data extraction like Clio Duo.
Yep.
That could probably do a lot of these things on this list. There's specific tools to litigation, like your deposition, transcription, all that stuff. There's specific tools to drafting, like your spell books. There's IP-specific AI tools. We don't have enough time to cover all of these tools. At the end, past our final slide, I have all these tools listed in categories for you to follow up and do your own research.
So download the PDF from the app.
Yeah, and augmentation too. So I really like the augmentation space where it's not AI first tools, it's tools that have been improved because of AI. And the AI is making things happen significantly faster, right? I was talking to InfoTrack, and they're not like an AI tool, they're not an AI solution, but now they're leveraging AI for the solutions that they deliver to you to be significantly more efficient. Gavel is doing this, 650 is doing this. Like there's companies that are now able to leverage these tools. Yes, question?
What is augmentation?
Yeah, so like it means that these are tools that are being augmented by AI to make their tools. So like in Gavel that used to be document, you used to have to go in and you had to manually pick, this is a name, this is a date that's changed, so that when you fill out the form, it automatically plugs in those automations. Well, now AI just reads your master services agreement or your estate plan, and it just suggests all the changes, and it's ready to go in like a few seconds. And now you just go in and you just verify that those are the automations that you want. That's an example that simply wasn't possible before, but now AI has augmented these technological solutions that are not like a quote unquote AI company or a legal AI company. Mm-hmm. And that's my favorite industry. I mean, Clio with Clio Duo falls into that category, right? Now you can leverage AI across all of your firm data. Well, they didn't launch as an AI company. That's just a feature of their product now. So Clio would fall into that category. So just some AI tips, right? Follow up. Context windows matter. Natural language is the interface. The future is agentic. We've kind of been talking about that, right?
Does everybody know what that means? It means you can tell the AI not just to generate something, but then do something with it, right? And so schedule a meeting, send an email, like create a restaurant reservation. All of these things it generates something with the AI and then does something with it. That's what we mean by agentic.
Yeah, here's a feature request for Clio Grow. Are you ready? This is the AI agent that I want. We can't do cold outreach. So we have to go to a networking event. We have to get a warm introduction. We have to whatever, right? So at these networking events, you get a list. Here's all the people who attended, their websites, et cetera. So what do? You either give it to a human person who works for you, if you're a solo like me. You have to go do research on these companies, see if they fit your client avatar, your ideal client, follow-ups, try to schedule a follow-up one-on-one to close the client. All of that could be done by agentic AI in the very near future.
All of it will be.
Yeah.
In the very near future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and for me, I'm going to be leveraging Google's Notebook LM Plus so at the end of this year, they're going to roll out the ability to share, just like with Google Drive or with SharePoint or OneDrive, access to somebody outside your organization into these notebooks. So one of my future subscriber benefits is my clients will get access to their file that they could query against inside of Notebook LM Plus when I'm not available, and my generalized knowledge base, right? So I'm going to be hacking it so it becomes a subscriber benefit for my clients. So that's something that I'm going to be doing in the near future, and you can too, whether you use Notebook LM Plus or Clio or another tool that does that.
So how many people here are still hourly billing? Most of the room, yeah. All right. So unfortunately, this is where we try to quantify. So throughout that 75% of billable work could be automated, right? This is how we came up with this. So in 2023, Goldman Sachs came out with a report that estimated, in addition to all these other industries, that 44% of work in the legal industry could be automated by AI. It would have an impact of at least a 40% reduction in headcount in the legal industry. And there was a lot of media attention to this. And we took a look at this and we're like, are they right? Is there a way that we could figure this out? So what they were looking at were work activities. And this is a classification of just generic things that people do at their job, put out by ONET, which is the Occupational Information Network. It's kind of a government agency. They have 950 plus occupations, 3 of which relate to legal, lawyers, paralegals, and legal secretaries and assistants, right? If you take a look at these generic work activities like we see here, documenting and recording information, getting information, et cetera, incredibly broad. But as I was digging into the report and digging into ONET specifically, you can go all the way down to detailed work activities and activity descriptions, like prepare legal documents. And I'm looking at this and saying, this is just time entries. These are like generic time entries I'm looking at here. I have a bunch of time entries. Let me see if I can compare ONET's work activities against these aggregated anonymized time entries and see what they tell us. So that's what we did. We actually went and looked at over 7 million time entries that have been contributed by law firms as part of the Clio service. And we classified those against those detailed work activities and then rolled them up to the generic work activities. And we asked an internally hosted LLM, which is another fun thing. You can just run these things on your own laptop if you find the right ones. We asked it to take a look at each of these time entries and classifications and estimate how much of it could be automated by AI. Depending upon who was assigned to the task, lawyer, paralegal, administrative assistants, there was a different degree of automation potential, right? 57% of lawyers' time entries suggested automation. 81% of administrative assistants suggested automation. And that means that, quite frankly, as firms are looking at headcounts and staffing, we're going to have some really big changes into the future.
My hope is that instead of seeing people be laid off and gotten rid of, if you could train your assistants, your paralegals, your lawyers to leverage these tools, you could scale and grow your practice without more hiring. When I'm looking for a legal extern, which by the way, if you're only law students, legalextern.com, because that's what you do when you need somebody. You get a domain, right?
Yeah.
They need to be able to use AI to work with me. They need to. And so that's the future. So I think it's not necessarily people will go away, it's learn to leverage the tools.
Yeah. So another thing that I think is really interesting about our research is I looked at who's billing, and especially in firms where you're overseeing people, it was 70% on average of time entries in these mid-sized law firms came from non-lawyers. 80% automatable, 70% of your time entries. So it's a huge chunk of change that is just potentially at risk. Interestingly, about 2/3 of all the time entries that we looked at, so what is that, like 4.5 million, fell into 3 main buckets: documenting and recording information, getting information, and analyzing information. Again, all with these detailed subtests that came later. And there are 2 things that I want to point out from the slides that you're seeing here. The top is how much of it was actually represented by time entries, right? So here we have prepared legal documents. Here we have prepared documentation of legal proceedings, 2 slightly different time entries. 98% of time entries in this category fell to preparing legal documents, and it's 86% automatable. If you've ever drafted anything in ChatGPT, right, you know it doesn't get it perfect, but it gets a lot of it done quick.
So I want to again reference the over $1.3 trillion market opportunity here, right? First of all, I think there's diminishing returns with billing time in this world, but because there's still such a huge market opportunity and all these legal needs are going unmet, even if you are able to automate a lot of these like previously billable tasks, your ability to serve more clients increases, and there's massive market opportunity. That's why I have my podcast and I teach other lawyers how to do what I do, literally even in my backyard, because I'm not worried about competition because there's so much market opportunity with the latent legal market. So don't be worried about that. There is opportunity here.
Yeah. So paying attention again to these gray bars that you're seeing, getting information, right? We've got examining legal data to determine whether or not to go with a case, right? 70% automatable, right? Are they married? Yes. Do they want to get a divorce? Yes. Are they domiciled in the state where you're offering services? No. Okay, the AI is done. Yeah. And then it just moves on to the next one. And then the last one, which is analyzing information, 81% came into evaluating findings, right? Doing like actual research, legal research, 70% automatable. There are 2 takeaways when you look at these charts. One, there was no task that didn't have some degree of automation potential. None, right? The second is there was no task that had 100% automation. There is room for lawyers in an AI system. There is a need for lawyers in an AI system, but it's going to do a good chunk of the work for you.
And this is a good thing, because a good chunk of the room is already using fixed fees, I saw. And so in the fixed fee and subscription space, this is great news, because when you're in that space, less time equals more money. So for the billable hour attorneys, I'm going to say that one more time. When you're not billing by the hour, less time equals more money.
Yep, that's absolutely the case. So we did another little bit of research as part of this legal trends report. How are clients finding the shopping experience for lawyers, right? And this is a repeat of research we did in 2019, where we actually did secret shopping across 1,000 randomly selected law firms. It did not go well, right? 60% of law firms didn't answer emails. Nearly half didn't answer phone calls. And of the 1,000 law firms we reached out to, like seven were able to hit like a very simple checklist of things that clients were looking for. So we're like, okay, it's 5 years later, let's do it again. It did not go well again. 73% of our secret shoppers said they would not recommend the law firm they reached out to. And these were highly targeted outreach. Like, I didn't just send people to like random law firm and pretend to be a client and give them no background. I was like, if they say they are a family law firm, here is your script. If they say they are a criminal defense firm, here is your script. Like, we gave these law firms a really honest chance to show us how they do. And 73% just didn't, right? Of the ones that actually did answer their phones or do outreach, the longer the line on these circles, the better, right? And the best performing experience for our secret shoppers were law firms that actually answered their phones. It's not a lot of them, but it was the best. The second best experience, which is like inline, is the chatbot, right? Our secret shoppers said that the chatbot answered their questions, was able to help them get scheduled, was able to provide like a friendly tone, which I know is tough for me to do on the phone sometimes. And when we asked just consumers in general, right? 51% of consumers said a chatbot is actually a great place to start when trying to see if this is the right law firm for them. And 61% said a chatbot is a great place to start, but I do want it to escalate to a conversation with a human. So that means you need to have like a chatbot on your website, have it like screen out those bad fitting clients for you, but make sure that if he does find somebody who looks like a good client, that they have the ability now to get some time in your calendar, right? And so they can leave that chat knowing what the next step is.
So we've been talking about this for a little while now, but shifting billing models, right? So now take it away with flat fees.
Yeah, so for the first time ever, we've been publishing flat fee data. Interestingly, flat fees have becoming just a bigger and bigger part of law firms. Law firms are out there doing what we're talking about. So if they can do it, you can too. Yeah, and this is what was really interesting. So we asked 2 questions as a part of our survey that we then compared against each other. Are you charging exclusively flat fees? And how widely are you using AI? And when we laid this out, what we found is the firms that were exclusively offering flat fees, right? They were the most wide users of AI. Because as Matt was saying, right, the faster you can get through a flat fee matter, the faster you get your money and you can move on to the next client, the next flat fee, you're ready to go. If you don't make this shift, looking at actual time entries, paid billing data from law firms over a 5-year period, we estimate that if the AI apocalypse comes for us all, the average lawyer is going to lose about $27,000 in billable time revenue every year.
Per lawyer.
Yeah.
That means if your firm has multiple lawyers, do the math, right? Now does investing in that legal tech make a heck of a lot more sense?
Yeah.
And adjusting to flat fee or subscription, right? So let's look at this hypothetical here, right? Let's say you charge $500 an hour. So 10 hours of billable time is $5,000. And I picked round numbers to make the math easy. So Gen AI takes 10 hours of billable time and now it only takes 10 minutes. And by the way, it actually takes a few seconds. But when you iterate using the AI tools, the quality of your work product within 10 minutes is significantly better than it was in 10 hours. So like literal billable time becomes 10 minutes, right? So under the billable hour, right, in a Gen AI world, $5,000 of work is now billable at 100. What do? Do you raise your rates? Well, Lexus's CEO might say that you do, right? The $10,000 billable hour.
Yeah.
But let's look at that. Okay, so to make 0.2 of an hour worth $5,000, your rate would have to be $25,000 an hour, right? That's 50x your rate. Will your clients be happy to pay that rate? Even if it's the same amount they would have paid and they get it faster, but you're charging them by the hour. What will that do psychologically to your client? Will they want to pay for that? Are you ethically allowed to charge that high of a rate? I seriously doubt it, right? So what does that mean then for serving this latent legal market? Even if you can get things done in seconds for clients in the latent legal market, but you're still charging by the hour? You think they're going to want to hire a lawyer that's charging $25,000 an hour? It only costs $500 to do this because we do it in seconds. Then just you have to reframe the way you're thinking about your pricing, right? Well, I say the era of the billable hour is over. And for me, what I recommend is enter the subscription model, right? Finally, now we're talking about it, right? And what is the subscription model? Depending on your local, rules of professional conduct, it may just be a recurring fixed fee. That's what it is according to my engagement agreement based on the Illinois rules. And if you haven't read your rules recently, see if they've been updated. Because some other pushback I get is, well, what about if I have to ask for my fee to be awarded in court? Where the Illinois Supreme Court changed our rules a couple years ago so that it's expressly allowed to get a fixed fee. And not only that, but you could deposit it directly into your operating account if you charge a fixed fee, and you could charge up front. Now you have to refund any unearned fees, but it also depends how you define your fees, right? Now what I do want to point out is there's some version of this in almost every licensing jurisdiction for lawyers in the US. In the ABA model rules, it's 1.5, common 5, but it ends with a lawyer should not exploit a fee arrangement based primarily on hourly charges by using wasteful procedures. Well, while you may have a rule of technical competence, it doesn't require you to use the technology. I suggest to you that this comment does, because if you're not using the tech and you're billing by the hour, you're engaged in wasteful procedures.
And we've already seen judges come down on attorneys' fees claiming that AI could have just done this. And quite frankly, that judge was wrong in that particular case, right? They didn't know what they were talking about when it came to the AI in question. 2019 out of Ontario. But yeah, that's the type of attitude and pushback we're gonna get from judges and clients going into the future. So, sorry.
What about a value-added billing clause? And I know like Arizona and California use value-added billing to adjust the time.
Yeah. That's definitely a possibility, right? If you can get a client to agree to it, right, and you don't abuse it, then it's reasonable.
It's all about how you define it in the scope of your engagement agreement. And I don't track time at all. I'm also no longer litigating. I litigated for 8 years. I'm done with that. Only the lawyers win in litigation. But look, I've seen some change order options within engagement agreements. Now, because I do month-to-month subscriptions and I'm not in litigation, I don't necessarily need that. But I have started to see some adoption in these engagement agreements for subscription and fixed fee-based services that, just like a contractor has a change order clause, where if we discover something that didn't exist before, we're going to have another conversation about fees. And that's just put that in your engagement agreement. Make sure it's clear and disclosed, right? There's not going to be a lot of ethical opinions on this, so just make sure that you're disclosing.
But we do have lawyers who do this every day. Criminal defense lawyers, give me $5,000, I'll represent you through plea bargaining, right? We go to trial, it flips to hourly. Right. And that's just the contract that they have with them.
Yeah, good morning, good question. Some of my clients, I see the benefits of having a subscription model and fees, but some of my clients are a little bit more accustomed to using billable hours, right? How would you recommend me to explain them and educate them as to the value and change those models?
What's your practice area?
So I do contract law, corporate law, mainly startups.
Okay, and do you do any litigation in court, or it's all?
No.
Yeah, okay. So especially in the corporate world, the time to sign and transact means that people start making money, right? They're selling their product or service or whatever. And when you're no longer billing by the hour, you are incentivized to get things done faster at a higher quality. And when you're leveraging these AI tools, it's like having a team of lawyers, when you're using the legal AI ones, looking at these documents and getting you to identify quick changes. And rather than having to go in and type in redline, you just say, change this clause to be more favorable for party A. And in a few seconds, it has a recommendation. Is it going to be exactly the words you want? No, but then you have to evaluate, is it good enough to just replace that in the red line, and Spellbook and some of these other tools do it right in Word for you, right, in an instant, and you don't actually have to go in and type, right? So it's just your ability to get to deal close happens a lot faster, and I'm able to explain to those types of clients that I have, now I'm not in the construction space, but I'm fractional GC, that we close this deal. Like the other lawyer, it took them 30 days to turn around every single time. When we set back red lines, my turnaround was in 24 hours. Like if I took 30 days too, we wouldn't have closed this transaction for another 6 months. How much money have you made in the last 6 months on this deal, right? Like that just paid for my subscription for the next 10 years with this client, right? And that's what it's about. And it's about, showing them that it's no longer about how long something takes. It's about getting the work done and moving things along fast and moving at the speed of business.
And it also gives them predictable legal spend on a monthly basis.
Oh, 100%. Now they can budget for that.
I have a question. Family law, and I have tried varying degrees of flat fees by the face of the case.
Okay.
When it flips, and so we're considering doing like a flat, we know certain cases are going to have certain things, certain items, like exchange of some simple discovery, filing of the petition, going to mediation, getting we know, and I know my cost on that. And so, but the unpredictable part is what, it's because, especially in family law, and I firmly believe that this can work in family law, so let me preface that. But the thing you've got to deal with is the unreasonable other side that maybe drives things up, or are you saying, well, we'll just go to hourly when it goes to trial, but you have to have other triggers. And then the other factor in that is addressing the issue of, hey, this is going outside the scope of what I quoted you on the flat fee, but a court's not going to let me out just, over that. It's like, well, Judge, this is a little outside the scope. So putting those protections in, so we protect ourselves, but also protect the client.
I think that's really good advice. Yeah. And I've seen family law firms not just do stages, but also do what's the subject of the dispute. Are you going to fight over the house? Do you want shared custody or single custody? Who gets the dog, right? And they price it out like a line item, right?
But it gets really overwhelming because I did that for a while, and
Yeah.
I had every possible thing that could happen in a case and a price, and it so overwhelmed the client. And so that is so, and going back and kind of doing a reiteration of it, it's like, okay, we know we're going to have these things, and then we have a schedule for hourly on the other things, or
Yeah.
you do a flat fee on the other things. That's just the hard thing to gauge, because, and sometimes You know, so anyway, just how to address that hybrid component would be a question.
I've got an answer for you. And it's not exactly the answer you're looking for, but I'm telling you that this is the answer. I have a great LinkedIn Live up on my LinkedIn account with Ron Baker. Does anybody know Ron Baker? Any hands in the air? He talks about how cost accounting, so think about how long something takes and applying an hourly rate to that, is actually not a good way to consider your costs. Here are your costs.
No, I'm costing what it costs me to employ the person.
Yeah.
That's my cost model.
Sure.
Yeah.
What does it cost me from an owner standpoint to pay people to do it, not what their hourly
Right, operating expenses and to pay people, salaries, right. So good. So that's already the right mindset then. Because then and then whatever your fixed fees are, or subscription plus fixed fees, or just subscription, or whatever you decide to do, you just now have to know, and you can charge a premium for that. It doesn't mean you can't charge a premium for fixed fees or subscriptions. Now, I don't, because I am targeting latent legal market. Family law is a little bit of its own thing. But then you know that what your profit is going to be on all of those family law cases that go for, and depending on how you categorize it, per stage, per length, every 6 months, every year, whatever. And you stop looking at it from a case-by-case, hour-by-hour basis, and you start taking a portfolio approach. And you look at over all of the cases that you have in the firm. And are some things going to take up more of your time, and some things are going to take up less? And usually, most of the time, most cases will not be that outlier. So with the portfolio approach and looking at it, at a higher level, yeah, some of those cases are just going to take a little bit extra time and extra effort, but on the whole, if you charge the right amount, and there are tech platforms on the show floor, Alt Fee comes to mind. They have a lot of family law clients. They help you make sure you're pricing your services right in that kind of regard, and they integrate with Clio, right?
So
They still analyze it by what the hourly rate is.
Oh yeah, they got to stop doing that. Yeah.
And
That's the wrong.
so all
Yeah,
these
you don't need
AI
that.
ethics opinions are all saying you can't charge for the time AI saves you, right? So if it normally took you 3 hours and now it takes you 10 minutes, you can't charge 3 hours. That's not what you can put on the bill. But they don't actually say you can't charge something that is similar to what you would have gotten for 3 hours, right? A $500 flat fee could be those 3 hours, so long as it's provided as a flat fee to part of your contract. The client gives you signed informed consent to it, right? And then in your situations where things go off the rails, right? Rather than moving them to an hourly basis, then you move them to like a monthly fee.
A top tier subscription, having tiered subscriptions help with this, right? So it's like, okay, this was a level 2 client, a level 2 matter, but because of what we discovered in discovery, this bumps up to our level 3 monthly pricing, right? So having those tiered options that clients are aware of before litigation helps with that. And also it helps them consider, maybe we should settle, because now that they actually know what it's going to cost, right? As opposed to, I don't know how long this is going to take. Now they actually know what it's going to cost if we have to go to trial. And I've seen some like per diem or per week fees, whether it goes for 3 days or 5 days, that's the week fee, like that's the fee, right? Now they're like, okay, well, it's going to cost me, $30,000 to try this thing. Maybe we do settle for, 15 or 20 or whatever, or 30 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, so the divorce might be, it's going to be $10,000 if we get it done in 3 months. But if issues continue to draw up past that 3 months, here's what we're going to switch to. And I'm going to tell you that in advance, and we're going to budget that in. This is my overhead cost. You know that in the background, right? This is the margin I'm going to put on top of that to cover those extra months, and then we're good to go.
And in the deal space, and I think this works with settlement too, you could have financial incentives that are success fees for if you resolve the situation within so many months, right? So if it's resolved in 6 months, I get a $5,000 success fee. If it's resolved within 6 months to 18 months in that range, then it goes down to $3,000 or whatever, right? So there's incentives for you, the lawyer, to actually help resolve the case sooner. And then the client knows, well, yeah, sure, there's that financial incentive, but if it goes for 2 years, I'm going to pay 5 times as much, right? So you just have to make sure the numbers make sense for that, and you're communicating it clearly to your client, and use AI to help you do that. That's not proprietary. Like, you could use the generic tools. The generic tools might be better than the legal tools for that. Right? Perplexity
Explain
Pro
to a
might be
fifth
good.
grader what a subscription fee is. Right? That's the prompt.
Yeah. So we're at time. So I just went to the last slide for final tips. We haven't had a chance to go over this. I encourage more questions. Here's our contact information if you want to reach out to us, and some resources that Clio offers, some resources that I offer on this topic. I talk about this all the time on Law Subscribed on my podcast. And Clio's got all their fantastic resources. And even though I'm not signed up for Clio, I take advantage of some of those resources that they give away for free. There's
Oh yeah, they're
fantastic
for everybody.
resources.
Yeah. Any questions? It was a lot.
And then I will say that I do have, so it's episode 101.5 of my podcast, Law Subscribed, is a recording of a ethics CLE I gave on this topic that goes a little deeper on the ethics of it all.
Yeah. If you look at it's Rule 1.5 fees, they do list like what are the non-exclusive points to judging the reasonableness of a fee, right? And part of it's time and labor, but part of it's also time to completion, right? And so what we're doing is, rather than talking about time and labor as what we bill by, we're talking about how fast and efficient we are, and we can charge for that.
It is almost always more valuable to get things done faster for clients. And I'm a former insurance defense attorney, and I know that's not always true when you're in the insurance defense business. But usually, it's always more valuable. And you start thinking about, like, what is the value to my client? The value is not, how long did this thing take? They don't understand that. At my base level pricing, it's $20 a month and $50 a page. They understand what a page is. They don't understand what a billable hour is and why did it take that long. And when they're able to put the request that they had into AI and they get a result and they're a layperson and they're like, well, the AI did it in a few seconds. Why did it take you 2 hours to do this? And if you could read it, you read the AI output and you're like, well, this isn't the same as the brief that I drafted, as the research that I did. But to the layperson, they don't see a difference. So it really does behoove us to start leveraging these tools before our clients just start using them and stop hiring us, because they don't see the difference that we see. But you can't bill by the hour in that world, because now you have to use the tools to do things faster. That's the problem. All right, I can stick around. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy to stick around. It's lunchtime though, so don't want to keep people from lunch, but happy to answer any and all questions.